Like to ask a question about the port in Guam. First is with regards to a partnership that the Army entered into with Actus Lend Leases at Fort Wainwright for privatization of housing. We've had some issues up north there with local contractors that have expressed some very serious concern that Actus Lend Lease was bringing in out-of-state contractors, thus displacing the local contractors. There were field hearings that were conducted by the legislature. There was a community advisory board that was later established, but it really was very contentious for a period of time, and our offices were very involved in trying to smooth things out. My question to you is, and we were essentially told that the laws governing private housing contracts allow the Army's partner to contract with whomever they want. And I guess the question that I have is whether or not you think that it's good policy to encourage housing privatization partners to use local contractors and local construction workers for the projects, or would it be fair to say that you're really indifferent on this? Because it is, and I can't imagine that this is just an issue that is specific to Fairbanks, Alaska. Help me out a little bit on this.
Well, you know, I've spent a lot of time telling people how wonderful housing privatization is. I think it's the most effective reform my office has taken on. I honestly have never come across this issue, so I don't.
So you think our situation up north is unique?
I just don't know. It may be that I'm been on the job 9 months, and it may be that I just don't know about it, and I don't. So I can't give you a good answer. I think my Army colleague may be able to shed more light, but I'd like to take the question for the record.
Well, I would appreciate it if you would do it, because as we look to the impact, of course, the economic impact that these projects bring to an area, I think it's fair to say that people look at them with great interest, because they believe that not only will military see a good benefit there, but the local economy will engage as well. And I think we've seen some real concerns where you bring the out-of-state guys in. They're there for the length of the project. They're gone, and there's no real commitment to the community. So if you could look into that, I would appreciate it. Second question. This was regarding a project at Elmendorf Air Force Base last year, and acting on a tip from the ironworkers unions, there were some immigrations and customs officers that came in to interview employees of an Air Force construction project. This was a contract for building hangars. 4 of 30 individuals interviewed were determined to be not lawfully eligible to work here in the United States. 1 was determined to have a criminal history in the state of California. I think we all recognize that our Air Force bases are supposed to be secure areas, and yet this was a pretty specific example of not only people who were not eligible to work here in the country and getting into the gate to do the work, but also of an employee with a criminal record. I have a couple questions. First, whether or not the contractor was disciplined for placing undocumented workers on an Air Force job site, and more broadly, what the administration is doing to ensure that these construction jobs, which are scarce and coveted most certainly, these construction jobs that are available on our military bases are going to people that are legally entitled to work here in the country.
Again, I don't. My Air Force colleague on the next panel may have more detail. I know the 4 were arrested through joint effort by immigration and Air Force agents. They used counterfeit documents. I think we're using this as a learning experience to improve our clearance approach to security. I don't know if the contractor was disciplined or not. It's hard to believe they were not, because my understanding is this was a contractor from California that went up to Alaska and took workers with them, and so it would seem like they were liable. But I don't know the specifics.
Well, if you can get more clarification for me on that, again, I would appreciate it. And then last question relates to the buildup on Guam. I'm, as the ranking member on the Energy Committee, one of our areas of jurisdiction and oversight responsibility is for the government's relationship with our territories. I understand that the Port of Guam was recently denied a $50 million grant from US DOT to kickstart the port's $200 million modernization program. Are you concerned about the status of the port's modernization? What steps are being taken to ensure that we're securing the needed funding for the port modernization effort?
Yeah, there was $1 billion in stimulus money for Tiger grants allocated by the Department of Transportation. And they were heavily oversubscribed. It was a huge demand for those, and Guam did not make the cut. There was a large application, $50 million. The nice thing was it would have been matched by a $50 million loan from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We are scrambling throughout the federal government, all of those of us who work on Guam, to address that issue so that we can try to preserve the USDA commitment to match.
So what do you figure the path forward will be?
Well, I don't. It's a little premature for me to say, but I think we recognize that the port needs to be upgraded to accommodate the buildup, and it's a shared responsibility within the federal government. So we're looking at the Department of Defense has very limited mechanisms for doing unauthorized. We can't do unauthorized military construction, so we don't have the authority to do this, even if we wanted to. We're looking at mechanisms though that would allow for a cross-government acceptance of this responsibility, because we do need to. This is step one in the buildup.
Well, it sounds like you're equally concerned and recognize
Yes.
the level of priority there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let me start on the